Welcome to the Book Party Podcast. Join us as we journey into the world of books with Michael T. Prepare to be captivated by engaging interviews, insightful discussions, and fascinating stories. You'll discover new adventures and gain insight into the creative process of the authors themselves as they share their struggles and accomplishments. Now let's hear from Michael T.
This is Michael T. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of the Book Party Podcast, where we explore the world of literature, humor, and suspense. Today, a debut author turns the literary world on its head with a fresh blend of comedy, suspense, and intriguing twists. Please join me in welcoming the incredibly talented D.C. Chase, the creative mind behind The Trouble with Marty. D.C. Chase is a rising star in the world of fiction, and his writing style is like no other. Imagine the uproarious comedy of the classic movie Airplane, seamlessly intertwined with the mind-bending twist reminiscent of James Patterson, is a combination that will leave you laughing, gasping, and turning pages late into the night. In The Trouble with Marty, we're introduced to a character who's as charming as he is enigmatic. Marty Wheeler, the dashing estate attorney from the community of Brentwood. Marty's life takes a wild turn when he accepts a case from the wealthy yet mysterious Jameson Bradford. But that's not all. Enter the sassy and quick-witted Bailey Martin, Marty's summer intern, and his ex-girlfriend's daughter. Bailey's presence promises to keep Marty on his toes, ensuring he doesn't get too comfortable with himself. But what sets The Trouble with Marty apart is its unique genre, coined by D.C. Chase as Sexspense. Yes, you heard that proper. Sex, comedy, and suspense, all rolled into one captivating story. As you dive into the pages of this book, you'll experience the perfect blend of humor, sexual tension, and suspense, building to a climax that will leave you utterly surprised and thoroughly entertained. This novel is just the beginning, as The Trouble with Marty is the first installment in the Hot to Trot series. Is a series that's bound to stay high on your reading list long after you've turned that final page, leaving you eagerly anticipating what D.C. Chase has in store next. So prepare to embark on an adventure filled with laughter, intrigue, and unexpected twists. Let's dive into The Trouble with Marty and discover the brilliant mind behind it all. D.C. Chase, welcome to the show, D.C., and congratulations on your debut novel. We can't wait to hear more about your unique storytelling style and exciting world of Marty Wheeler. So, D.C., why don't you take it from here, fill in the blanks a bit, and tell our listeners about yourself.
Thanks for the introduction, Michael, and thanks for having me on. My cat joined us here for a few seconds, but I wasn't sure if he was going to be on camera or not, but he walked away. But hi, everyone. My name's D.C. Chase, and like you probably just heard, I've written a novel, the first in a series, and that first book is called The Trouble with Marty. And, you know, this has been something that's been – I have been at writing and have been at this for about 16, 17 years, and through various different machinations or, names that I had used, my own name, pen names, things like that. And this is really the first thing that has stuck in terms of, trying to get a publisher interested or trying to get some sort of vibe going with it that was unique and different than just reading. Like, there's obviously a lot of genres out there, but like you said, this one sort of combines a few elements that people might think are a little unusual at first. How do you put that all into a novel? But that's kind of where we're at. And I'd also like to say that DC Chase is, obviously I'm a writer, but I'd also like to say it's more of like a brand too, to whereas, when you see my logo and you say, well, what's this DC Chase? What's that all about? It would be like if you went to the grocery store and bought a pack of M&Ms or your favorite a soft drink or something, you see that label and you know what it stands for. So we're also trying to build that a little bit as well, as we move along. And secondly, I'd also like to just say real quick that part of the reason why I want to do this and why I wanted to get on podcast and talk isn't just to say, hey, look at me, look at what I've done. It's to realize that, doing this type of thing leads to, it can be depressing. It can be like, I'm just, a lot of bad days, nothing's going on. No one's buying my book. What am I going to do? And even if the people who are listening to the show don't really want to write a novel or be in that, it's hopefully give them a little bit of encouragement to say, yeah, look at what this guy's done. I've dropped out of high school. I got thrown out of high school once and dropped out a second time. So to get to that point, was told when I actually tried to get into college that I read at a third grade level, to get to here is a pretty big accomplishment, but it took me almost 30 years. So I would like to hope that if people are listening to this is to say, don't make the mistake that I did and assume that you have forever to make your mark in life, or that, well, I'll get to it later. It's not that big of a deal. Go for your dreams now and, don't wait for tomorrow, So that's how I'd like to start out with.
Yeah, okay. Well, on your publishing journey, did you go the self-publishing route or the find an agent agency route or something in between, like a hybrid route? How did you take your publishing journey?
For this novel, it's more of a hybrid. The publishing company I'm working for, Twin Tails Publishing, they handle, got me an editor and do the cover and help out with the blurb and, that type of stuff. They're things that I couldn't do myself if I tried. So that was more along what you would consider probably a traditional publisher. And then, at the end of the day, once it got published, it's on Amazon is like a direct to print. So that you probably would consider more of an indie author, doing it on your own. So it kind of had both elements to it, to be quite honest with you.
So it's basically self-published, but you had the collaboration on all the other elements.
That's correct.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, my 3 books that I've already got out were self-published, but instead of going through a hybrid publisher, I built a team, and my team is all through Fiverr that I went, and I'm on a 4th book that I'm doing now, and I've already got my team put together, so it makes it a lot easier for me to do. It's a little slow in the writing phase right now because I got a lot of, going on with the podcasting. So it takes up a lot of my time, but I'm getting there, almost halfway done. So take us to a point that you would consider your worst author moment in writing this novel.
Well, I'd say the moment was something that it would have continued for a little bit longer than just that, but it's probably what a lot of people face is, is this good enough to be published? Can I get someone interested in it so I don't have to necessarily handle all those things on my own, like the editing and things like that, the blurb and, like I said, all the stuff I mentioned before. So, and I apologize. There's my cat again, decided to make an appearance. But the idea is that you're just not sure if you're ever good enough to do it. Will you ever gain somebody else who's as passionate as you are about what you're doing, to get them passionate about it? And it's one person at a time. And that, the self-doubt, I would say something would definitely have been the worst part of it. It's just not knowing.
Okay, well, let's flip the coin a little bit and go to what I call an epiphany moment. Take us to a point where you're doing something other than writing. You could have been driving, could have been cooking, could have been taking a shower, going to, waking up in the middle of the night. But something else, and a bright light goes off in your head, this, oh, wow moment. I got to get a pen and paper. I've got to write this down right now. Take us to a moment like that.
Well, I'd say, oddly enough, it was during COVID when, like probably a lot of other people I was just sitting around in my butt with nothing to do. And interestingly enough, it went back to 2011 when I had started a novel. And back in the spring of 2011, I was trying to do some, online dating. And I was like, well, this is perfect. It'll be perfect research. It'll be a guy that's looking to meet the right woman. And, I'll be able to use the dates that I go on is kind of like this weird research to make sure it's authentic. And as I was doing the dating part of it, I realized that this isn't going to be a romantic comedy. There were some really odd occurrences that happened, and just it didn't really work out. So I shelved the book for 9 years. And the epiphany is during COVID, I was like, well, what can I do with this book? I'm not doing anything else. Let's try picking this up and writing it again. But I was like, I don't want it to be a romantic comedy. There's got to be some dark elements because I see some things happening. There's obviously some sexual tension. How do I cram that all into it? And that was the idea. The epiphany actually was, why can't we just do multiple things and sort of create our own little genre and just have it something be completely different? Why shoehorn myself into something that I know I can't make a 300-page novel just be totally comedic and funny? So I would say that was something that hit me. It's like, why not? Why? Let's just throw caution to the wind and see what happens. Why do what everybody else is doing? Let's try something else and like make my own little niche out of it, which I think is what I've done, oddly enough. And that gets to the Sexspense thing and that whole treatment. So that was in about May of 2020 when that hit me, and we've just taken it from there.
Well, that's great. So what is the one thing that you are the most fired up about or excited about right now today?
Well, in terms of writing, I had just finished what would be the 5th book in the series last week. And I think what keeps me going and keeps me fired up is what's next. It's doing this, at least in my opinion, there's some downtime, but not a lot, because it's like, well, what's next? What's going to happen next? What's the next book? Give me some ideas. How's this going to work? So I think what gets me excited is that it's the idea that this isn't easy just to come up with ideas. At least for me, it's, oh, well, I got this planned out. I got the next 6 months of writing plan. No, it's a day-to-day process. And I'm excited about where that next book's going to take me and where what the next story is going to be and what the adventure is going to be for myself as well as the readers who will hopefully read it down the road.
This is Michael T. We invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com, hit that subscribe tab on top, and scroll down to the icon of your choice, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey, where you can download and follow us there. And please leave a review. And please don't forget to sign up for our video newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. So, DC, we're going to enter into the lightning round. What the lightning round is 4 pointed questions for 4 pointed answers. So, before you ever started writing, before you became an author, what was holding you back from becoming an author in the first place?
Well, it's the same thing. It's kept me back or held me back my whole life in terms of trying to accomplish anything is fear and anxiety and the what if I'm not good enough moments. And, like I said at the beginning, one of my goals is to hopefully reach your listeners. And, don't wait from the time you're 17 years old till you're 47 to try to do something that you feel passionate about, even if you, especially these days with, social media and the different things you can do. And, just like writing a book, you can do it yourself now. You don't need these big publishing houses. But the idea is don't let it do what it did to me, which is to just sort of grip you in this, anxiety-filled days and weeks and sometimes years as to what am I going to do, and how am I going to accomplish my goals when I sometimes can't even get out of bed. So I think that's a big one. I think fear, it can be a crippler for sure.
Okay, once you started writing, what was the best advice you had ever received?
Well, a couple things. One probably be the most obvious, but my dad said, he's like, stick with what you know. Don't write these long-winded things that you aren't sure about or have no credibility with, because people aren't going to be able to make any sense out of it. Or going to realize it's fake and it's not going to work. So that may seem very simplistic, but it's very true. Stick to what you know. And when I started working with Twin Tails Publishing, the gentleman who runs that, his name is Simon King. That's at least his pen name. And if you look at Simon King on Amazon, he's got about 30 books, that he's published. He's well into the indie author experience and what to do. And he said, hey, man, try to get a series going. He's like, because if you just release this one book, he's like, that's great, but you're there one day and gone the next. To try as an indie author to gain an audience, you're not just going to do it with one novel and say, look at me, here's my book. It's a slow, long game process that you really have got to be willing to hang in there and stick with it and keep the series going, and to find your reader and for them to find you. But to do it with one book, not that you can't do it, not that people don't have success, but this was the plan. And this was, when I heard him say that, it made so much sense. And I was like, okay, let's go this route and see what happens.
Okay, well, share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
Well, it kind of, I hate to keep saying the thing about fear, but the weird thing about it with anxiety is when you're able to turn it into something positive. Those things that race through your mind or you're anxious about or constantly dwell on, when you're able to channel that into something that's positive, what's this next chapter going to be like? What's this next or whatever? And for some reason in my mind, the things that make me jittery and nervous and have all those anxious moments also are the same thing in some weird way that allows me to do what I do. I just wish I could somehow channel it to where you could block out the negative stuff and just focus in on your ability, this whatever weird talent that I have, and keep that going. But I would definitely say that's something that's very me.
Could you share with our listeners an internet resource that you use when you write?
To be honest with you, my writing is more like a rubbing two sticks together type thing, to where it's very easily thought of, and I don't really do too many things that I would have to research. Although last week I did go to a medical website to research some details about a concussion, just to see if the scenario I was proposing in the novel I was writing made sense, so it was authentic. So it's probably WebMD or something like that. But to me, other than doing something like that, just to make sure that this is a little bit out of my element, I got to make sure that what I'm saying actually makes sense, or what I'm writing makes sense to the audience, especially if a doctor would happen to read it. Other than that, usually I don't really get too involved with too much research or too much on the internet, because unfortunately a lot of what you read on the internet, you're not sure if it's true or not anyway. So you're just like, I don't know, just winging it.
I use a thesaurus, and that works really well so I don't just keep, repeating the same words all the time. I like to use a thesaurus, and it makes me look, I actually know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny, like the word said, when you write, you're like, I said, he said, whatever. There's so many ways to just say the word said, right? So, definitely if thesaurus helps, that little weird thing on Microsoft Word where it gives you, I guess, a little like thesaurus inside of it, or, one of those little things that pops up. But yeah, absolutely. Repetitiveness and coming up with the same words over and over again. Yeah, it does get monotonous. I'm sure it is pretty boring for someone to read. So you're right.
Right. Well, so DC, we're entering the grand finale. And what I want you to do is take your time and just tell our listeners about your book.
Sure. Well, the Trouble with Marty is about the main character, Marty Wheeler, is an estate attorney. And if it's one thing I know, it's estate work, inheritance tax, stuff like that. I'm a government worker, and that's kind of my job to know that stuff. So here in Pittsburgh, when I worked in what's called the city county building, you'd see all these attorneys coming in with, all the, like larger than life, like they were going to be on TV or something, or getting ready for an interview, all dressed to the nines. And I'm looking at these guys coming in, and the county workers who I worked with who were there and interacting. And some of the county workers I worked with were larger than, it was like being in a Seinfeld episode. You were never quite sure, like, if this was real, or like if people were acting, or what was going on. So it was always in the back of my mind, probably for about 10 years, we got to come up with a novel that incorporates some of these people I work with, for sure. And how do I make an estate attorney, when you'd say, well, that's pretty bland or pretty matter of fact. How do I make that person like this larger than life type of individual that people would care about? And that's a lot about what Marty is. He's obviously an estate attorney. He lives here locally in a little town called Brentwood. And, he's kind of like Fletch. He's kind of like Chevy Chase in that regard, with that kind of comedy and his kind of way he goes through life. And like you suggested, his sidekick Bailey, who is his old girlfriend's daughter, who's a senior at Duquesne University, is like his sidekick for the intern for the summer as the book kicks off. And the adventures that they get into, and again, it has a lot of comedy to it. I think the people that have reviewed it have told me there's a lot of laugh out loud moments. I think one of the greatest things that people have said about it that I would have said myself, but would never have realized that other people would think so. It's like you're a fly on the wall. Marty is in first person, so it's always I. But I know you want to show a story and not tell it because you do that through dialogue and all that. But the way he goes through his life or goes through his day, you're living the adventure with him. And some of these over-the-top people that are in his life that he deals with on a day-to-day basis, including Bailey, make that story go. And, oh, by the way, there's a good bit of sexual tension to it, a good bit of that. And there's also, some James Patterson-like twists and with the plot and things that change suddenly. Be honest with you, when you're dealing with a lot of these big-time authors like a Patterson or a John Grisham or people of that ilk, if you wanted to do an analogy like, baseball, they're fastball pitchers. They got a fastball, they got a curveball, they got a wicked slider. I don't have a 95-mile-an-hour fastball at my disposal. In that analogy, I can't write like that. I got a knuckleball. So when you look at the knuckleball, it's like, oh, that's easy. This is simple. If you've ever actually had to step up to the plate and try to hit a knuckleball pitcher, it's like, this isn't going to be that difficult. The guy throws like 50 miles an hour. I can do this. Until you get up there and you see that thing dancing and weaving around, and it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Or this is more than I bargained for. And that's kind of what I think I do as an author. And that's what Marty Wheeler is, and all the Hot to Trot series in particular, I guess I would say in general. You kind of think, oh, this is going to be an easy read. This isn't going to be but then you get into it. You're like, man, this is really something different. I'm not used to reading this. And, if you know baseball at all, there's a few knuckleball pitchers that are in the Hall of Fame. You don't have to be these guys like Nolan Ryan that throw real hard or do different things to be successful. So, you just have to realize who you are, come up with what your niche is. And with this Marty Wheeler, I think it's going to be enjoyable for people to read because it's a different type of thing. These are really fast chapters. So you get through a lot of material, quickly. It makes you give like, wow, I read 50 chapters today. Well, that's a lot. But in reality, you might have read 150 pages. So, which is still a lot. But, you'd say I read that many chapters. You're like, well, I must have read 2 books worth. So I think the pace, I think the vibe, I just think the whole general who Marty is in terms of he's a likable character. And just the adventures he gets into are going to make you laugh. You're going to like, oh boy, what's going to happen to him next? And, I think it's something that people give a chance to, as they say, usually say seeing is believing. But in this case, I think reading is going to be believing if people look at it and say, yeah, this guy, DC Chase, talking all this wild stuff, but you know what? He's got something. And I think that's what I would definitely want to leave people with.
That sounds fantastic. But DC, we thank you so much for being here with us today, opening up to us, and I'm sure our listeners appreciate this too. Again, this is Michael T. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com, hit that subscribe tab on top, then scroll down to the icon of your choice where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey. You can download and follow there. And please leave a review. Don't forget to sign up for our video newsletter to get the information for our upcoming shows. Book Party Podcast is owned and powered by Legacy Publishing, LLC. This is Michael T. signing off.
You must not miss our next episode as we delve into a world of inspiration, entertainment, and thought-provoking insights. Join Michael T. on the next Book Party Podcast and experience a new adventure, a new story, and a complete immersion into the world of Pages Unveiled, Chronicles of the Writing Journey.